cool. I love seeing who has my book. It's like amazing.
Yep.
I'd read it if I was literate. It's a little
But
above
you
my
can look
reading
at the
ability.
pictures.
Oh yeah, I guess they are true. They are very nice pictures. You're right. I can still get my enjoyment out of it. You covered all your bases with that one, Amy. Hey, so we are joined today by a person whose shadow I consistently live in, being a euphonium player in the state of Florida, Gail Robertson. Hey, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us.
Thanks for the invite.
So we had to schedule this. You're not backstage at a concert this time around, right? Because we were
No,
scheduling
I'm
around
here.
something.
I'm here for real. No, we have as much time as you want.
Oh, great. Yeah, she was, Amy, you weren't a part of this conversation. She was like, yeah, well, maybe I could go backstage and we could do that then. And I was just like, or you could be the badass that you are and just push us around because we're okay with that too. Um, so how's everybody's end of the semester going? Is everybody else in chaos? How are things
One
in
more
Central
day left for
Arkansas?
me. One more day left, just tomorrow only.
If you want to, make sure, I mean, you're more than welcome to give Ross as hard of a time as humanly possible.
Oh, I forgot you had that connection. Yeah, I have juries with just him tomorrow for part of the day. The trumpets and the tubas new for combining.
Oh,
I
there's worse
begged
people that
I
you could
begged
spit
my
in there.
faculty to not have the like you did today. It would be at 8 o'clock, I think, until 6 o'clock tomorrow. And I just said, no, let's divide.
Yeah, that's a fair point. But you're just coming off a big old concert with Battle Creek a couple weeks ago, right?
Yeah, last week was Brass Band of Battle Creek, and then from there I went to the Holiday Brass Concerts, which is the main fundraiser for Women's Brass Conference, and played four concerts with Susan Slaughter in St. Louis.
So maybe we
So,
can we talk about the brass band of Battle Creek, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that for anyone who's not familiar.
well, the Brass Band of Battle Creek. It's kind of hard to start. Where do you begin with that? It was started by two brothers, Jim and Bill Gray, who are podiatrists. And believe it or not, their uncle lived down in South Florida back in the day when I was in high school. My band director was a tubist, and he played in a band down there that was called the Boca Raton Pops Band. It was actually a professional wind band. And I got asked to sub on tuba there. And lo and behold, there was this older gentleman that was there, and he had the cloth things on the horn, like where you grab it and everything. And I was and at this point, I was making sort of that transition from tuba to more of euphonium. And so my mom was a sewer. So, of course, my mom had to drive me these rehearsals because it was in Boca Raton, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, long story short, he's their uncle that was the inspiration for the brass band of Battle Creek. And because he was a euphonium, he was a postman and he was a euphoniumist and a really great euphonium player. And, through the years, I think he had told his nephews, Gail Robertson this, Gail Robertson that, blah, blah, blah. Well, finally, they waited, I guess, till I grew up and invited me. And I came out there for a concert years ago. I don't know. I'm going to guess it was like maybe 93 or 94. It was really early on when they were still sort of a community band. And Luis Monanano was in the section. It was a lot of local players. So the band started out as sort of a local band, like a lot of other bands are. And then one by one, they kind of brought a professional in. And, I think it started with, Woody English was from that area. And so he played, and then Stephen Mead came in. It was pretty amazing. I think the Gray Brothers might have played in it in the earlier days. And so, it was sort of, like a half professional, half locals kind of a band. And sadly, one by one, the sort of locals, you could say, were, replaced by professional players. And, the band grew and everything. So I don't know, my first time was just a one and done kind of thing. And then it was years later, I got invited back. And then I've been a regular member now for, I don't know, I'm going to guess 15 years. It's been a long time. So, and I'm playing the British baritone, and I share the section with Demondre Thurman.
I
There's worse
remember,
people to be in a section
yeah,
with.
right, right.
So can you pull the curtain a little bit? What is like your okay, so you get scheduled to do a concert. So what does that look like for you, in terms of like travel, when do you get the music, like all that sort of a thing? What's that kind of look like?
Back in the day, they would mail the music out, and you would get a package, and you would open it and practice. Now we'll get a bunch of PDFs of it. And I would say for the concert we just did, which was, last week, we probably got the music back in maybe October, a piece or two at a time. And, a lot of it has been recently been arranged or transcribed, you could say, from like Wind Band Rep or whatever it is by Jim Gray, who really is an untrained musician. He's a podiatrist, so he does a lot of the charts. So sometimes we'll get a recording like this last time we did something. It was something from maybe might have been like the Airman a Note or, some kind of piece. So we'll get a sound file of what it is. But most of the time, I don't mess with the sound file. You look at kind of what it is and you just go. So we'll get the music ahead of time. They fly you in, it's a paid job. Obviously they pay for our airfare and put us up in the hotel. It's one of the few gigs that you do where you get your own hotel room, which is sometimes nice, which I don't mind sharing with somebody, but you go back to your room and you want to chill, and dang it, if they're going to watch some show with a laugh track, that would drive me nuts. Right. So
yeah, but, I know people get annoyed with me because I like to do backflips between the two beds. And, I have to do 50 minimum, and you can't sleep with that going on. You just have to wait till I'm done.
Yeah, well, there was a time when we flew in on Thursdays, and then sometimes you were walking with your suitcase and your horn from the airport into rehearsal. And they stopped doing that, I'm going to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Now we actually fly in on a Wednesday and you don't have anything. And then the next morning, there's a breakfast that sort of serves as a meeting, you could say band meeting. And, we normally break into sectionals. We go and, have sectionals with like the instruments for like an hour and then come together with full band. So let's say, a typical, actually I had the schedule somewhere, but typically it's like 10 a.m. breakfast at the Griffin. And then we might start rehearsal at 12:30 or something. And then there's built-in breaks. And, I think it might be 6 hours of playing that first day, I'm going to guess, by the time you have the breaks taken out of it. And then the next day, we often do a children's concert where they bust in, I don't know, it's 1,500 elementary school kids.
I saw the video. It was amazing.
Yeah, packed. Yeah. And it is so loud. I mean, I hate it when a conductor says hello and then they go, hello, and they go, hello, and then they scream. Oh, it was so loud. But so we do that. It's normally like a 30-minute program. You play bits and pieces of stuff, and then there's an introduction to the instrument. So I think I started out with a trill, and then I went into Jingle Bells, and I hipped it up or something like that. Joe Alessi said he liked it. But so we all we'll do a demonstration of the instruments. And then after that, we kind of change our clothes, and then there's a rehearsal, and then we normally get done a little earlier on the Friday because we started earlier. Then there's the next day's the gig. There was a time when we did 2 shows. There was a Friday night concert and there was a Saturday night show. And then, of course, stuff slowed down with COVID, whatever. So now it's just one. But this last concert we have was completely sold out all the way up to the nosebleed section. So there might be a chance that they would open up for 2 shows to see.
Very cool. I remember that was at the Brass Band of Battle Creek rehearsal during a break is when I auditioned for Steve Mead.
Cool.
Yeah, I remember Steve asking, I was in Columbus, and I had my senior recital in early December, and I remember him saying that following weekend, he was like, I don't know anything about U.S. geography. Is Michigan close? And I was like, he could have been like, is California close? And I would have been like, yes, it is. So I drove up, and he ducked out and showed me a room. And then I remember warming up, and I was petrified, absolutely petrified. Like, what have I gotten myself into? I can't believe I'm doing this. I'm going to make a total fool of myself. I'm doing all these things in my head. And I don't know who it was, but a woman ducked her head in. And she said, are you here to audition with Steve? And I said, yeah. And she said, you're going to get in. And that was the turning point. I have no clue who that woman is, but that switched my mental game completely. Still no clue.
Wow.
Who that person is, but somebody in that ensemble I have to thank, because, that made me feel like, oh, okay, well, maybe I can do this. Maybe I'm not insane,
Wow. Did you get to catch? Uh-oh.
We hear you.
Oh, looks like something said to launch the meeting right now. Open Zoom. Oh, okay. All right. It went away for a second. Did you get to hear much of the band or anything? Or
yeah, he gave me free tickets for my dad and me. And afterwards, we went out and I got a martini and some shrimp at the bar. That my dad was like, anything you want here, here.
That's awesome.
Went through the audition, so yeah. So
yes, sometimes we go there and you might have 2 or 3 lessons. Just depends. Sometimes people find out you're there and they want to have a lesson. And quite honest with you, it's fine when that happens, but sometimes it's just nice to have a break. Sometimes I go to Brass Band in Battle Creek and it's an escape, or I could do a lot of Christmas shopping. I try to bring, the bigger suitcase so I can bring home my presents, because it was really the first time in the whole semester you've had a break. But now that we're a little busier with, the children's concerts, it's gotten a little busy over the time. This past time we were there, I went and I visited one of the patrons of the band, who's a wonderful euphonium player who's in his 90s now, and I went and drove to Bay City and saw him. So I escaped COVID. Some people in the band got COVID this last trip a little bit. Really? And so I didn't do much of the hangs because I was doing other things. So I'm glad for that.
Yeah, it was like at Athena, like 12 people.
Oh, yeah.
It was like, Athena was a super spreader.
Yeah.
Yeah, I escaped that, though.
Yeah, I mean, that was the IWC that was a spreader, I believe. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Who knows? I mean, it's one of those things where some people don't have a lot of symptoms, and you might have it and you don't know. So it can happen.
Yep.
Yeah, the vibes from one day of IWBC to the next day. It was like everybody's like happy hugging and all this stuff, and then masks.
Oh, I know. Then they had that food. They had that spread out there in the lobby, and I don't know. We all walked right out the building and didn't have any of it because it was, I get kind of weird with certain things. The tongs, like everyone's doing that. Like, I don't go to a barbecue, like a buffet or anything like that, because of all the tongs. So, yeah, I don't know. I saw all that stuff out there and I said, I think I'll take a 0.
I'm sure the undergrads are more than happy to take your portions.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's actually a pretty good segue unintentionally to the other thing you just said you were doing. So you were just doing the benefit or the fundraising concert, right? You said that was in St. Louis?
Yeah, Susan Slaughter has pretty much funded, I would say, probably most of the IWC is funded through these holiday brass concerts. Ginger Turner does one in Baltimore, and then Susan does. There's, I think, 2 a day when we've played in St. Louis. And, it's pretty neat. You get there and she is super, super like me, OCD, got the list of what's going on. I mean, the sheet I have it somewhere here in the office, but it says what you're playing, where your location is. And you might be in the balcony for the first piece, and then there's something else that happens and you have to end up over there, or you're down on the stage. And so all while the concert's going on, people finish, there's a short clap, and then you go somewhere else. Have you done one of those, Amy? Have you done one?
No, I haven't. I've just...
The one in Baltimore is pretty cool. But, that's a really huge church there. I remember Stacy Baker and I had done that. I think this was when I was president of IWC. I had done it. And so they invited me as a guest. But we couldn't get back quick enough. And the piece started, and so we were like behind. So we sat there. Since it's in that church, it's one of those pulpit or whatever it was. Yeah. So we sat, and it was one of those really big ones. You went upstairs, and then you did the speaks from like the lectern up there. We sat in there, and then someone just conducted from the side so we could see it, because we couldn't see. And we were playing the Tuba and Euphonium was coming from that thing.
I should be like IWBC. Are you listening? I have not done that performance yet. Okay.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a tricky thing. She likes to, I think both of them like to bring sort of local people. I kind of got in on it. Well, I got in on it. Well, but you know what I mean? It's a matter of asking, but we were at one of the IWCs, we're playing a Monarch one time, and I had written while I was on the plane, a quintet version of, I think it was, Angels We've Heard on High, because it's Angie Hunter and Velvet Brown, Stacy Baker, myself, and Jan Duga. And so we were just reading it at one of the breaks, and Susan really liked it. She says, well, I should have y'all come in and be the featured group. So that's the first time I did it, was when I had written that arrangement of that piece. But this last time, I was just coming back from Brass Band in Battle Creek, and she was looking for some conductors, and didn't really necessarily need a euphonium player. So I played British brass baritone in there. She didn't know what it was. I had to send her pictures of it, but it really worked great, because some of the music they play in that is borrowed from brass band rep that it's kind of downsized from. So there was actually euphonium parts in baritone 1 and 2 parts. So, but it's a fun hang there. You never know who's going to be in that. It's a lot of the symphony players. There's a lot of St. Louis symphony players in there. and some people from the area. It's all run like a machine. There's these volunteers, man, first thing in the morning. There's all these people that are, a lot of them are senior citizens that are just followers of Susan Slaughter, and they're there decorating the place. The tree goes up, and all the stuff, and then the chairs get hauled in, and at the end there's a whole crew, and it gets hauled right back out. It's pretty amazing.
That's super cool.
So it's pretty funny. Like at IWBC, I didn't think about it at the time. So I was there with one of my friends from undergrad. And like, that was back when you were still at UCF when we were down there. We were at USF with Jay. And so, those two studios interacted constantly. We were always hanging out together. So we were like used to, the Gail that is Gail Robertson. Like we were used to like that situation. And that he and I are just hanging out at IWBC, and like you're in Monarch, you're in Athena, you're having pieces premiered and all this sort of thing. And like, we don't think anything of it. And then one of my students who was there was like, "Oh yeah, Gail Robertson's doing so much stuff at this conference." I was like, when we were all like, "Oh yeah, I guess she is," because it's just who you are and what you do.
Well, I love collaborating with Jay Hunsberger. We always did stuff together. We invited all the universities from the state of Florida to come to our events, and of course, Jay and I always did it. But
well, I think it was when you, I think it was you, Stacy, Jay, and I think it was maybe Matt Troutman.
Oh yeah, we did that quartet.
Yeah, you were calling it the Symbiosis Quartet for that particular. Yeah. But that was the first time I had ever seen professionals in rehearsal in any capacity whatsoever. Like, so the first professional euphonium player I ever saw in person was actually Gail.
Oh really? How cool. Mm-hmm. That was that performance where we actually did a demonstration for the players with the bells out and the bells back. And you could hear what the big difference was. Because, one of the big problems with Tuba Euphonium Quartet is people just don't set up right. They'll have this person who can't play soft on the end chair. It's like, hide them in the back, or there's someone who can't play loud and they're buried. So I think it's very successful. I think having the bells the right way and the right people in the right place is very helpful.
Well, I think in terms of the chamber list for the FBA solo and ensemble list, I think you're like half of it.
Oh, really? So I haven't looked at that lately. When I first got my hands on that FBA list, there was 4 Tuba Euphonium quartets on the entire list. And then most of the solo rep was being picked from the trombone rep. There was no euphonium pieces on there. So I found out who the person was in charge and submitted a whole bunch of it. Now, since I've been out of town, I don't know kind of what's going on that list. I mean, I do come down every year and I judge solo ensemble. I'm the state judge still. But I have, I don't know what's on the list and what's not. I think Liberty Bell and Amazing Grace were on there at some point.
I think you have a Washington Post as well. I think something like that, maybe. Today was a fun adventure because I for the first time ever, and I've been teaching privately now in the Hillsborough County area for 10 years now. I finally have two different groups of 4 students, but 2 separate students who want to do euphonium duets. And I was like, that's cool. Let me see what's on the list. Thinking probably there's something by Gail Robertson on there. There's no euphonium even in the drop-down menu for duets.
Oh, we need to change that then, yeah.
Yeah. That was going to be not a show topic. I was just going to complain about that, and because I knew you knew who to talk to probably about that. But it does lead into the arranging stuff. Like, you write for a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of your career in Disney was like arranging as well as playing and all that sort of thing. Like, but nowadays with the brass band and all sorts of stuff, is it a inspiration comes first or just need thing or a little column A, column B? How's that work? How does getting into the arranging game happen for you?
Well, I think my very first arrangement I can think of was when I was I guess it was like right before my senior year in high school, and I was at the Canon Music Camp. Somehow or another, I missed that curfew. And so I got in trouble and I couldn't go on the trip the next day and I had to stay in the room. I wasn't doing anything wrong, but I missed that. And I remember I just did 2-part harmony to Earth, Wind, and Fire's Let's Groove, and I remember writing that on paper. And then it got to where when I was in the stands, when I was an undergraduate, and even when I was an undergraduate and a high school student, I was writing out stuff in the stands, and we'd read like little kind of like tidbits of things. Got the job at Disney. Actually, when I went to IU with Harvey Phillips, because there wasn't a Tuba Euphonium quartet for my undergraduate. I was often the only euphonium player, maybe one of 2 briefly. So we didn't have a quartet of any sort or ensemble or anything with tubas and euphoniums. But when I went to IU, that was like a big playground. Harvey had that big group. And so I did some arrangements there. And then I don't know, then the Disney thing happened, and that's a huge playground there. I could write for Willie Clark because he has fast fingers. I could write for Pat Glenn because he has wonderful bass lines. It was where you start writing those custom charts. Makes me think of the charts that were for like the Rich Madison's, the tuba jazz, how the part would say Rich and the other one would say Harvey. It had their names on it. So I was very much in that mindset of writing for people. That was easy, automatic, wrote a lot of charts for that. When that went down the tubes, when we got laid off from Disney, it became sort of a big hole. It was a big void for me. I didn't have people to write for. So then I formed that group with Stacy Baker, wrote a lot of duos, a lot of different things like that. Now it's more inspiration if I want to write for somebody. I've written some pieces lately that were for different people for whatever reasons. My students have tagged in on, can you play on my recital where you write something for us? So I've done that. I did write something recently for a brass quintet call for scores. I thought, well, I'll just throw something in there. But, writing is my biggest, that's an escape. I think that's like, I don't write all the time. And I kind of save it for when I want to do it. I'm in the middle now of writing a piece for one of my my students who's he's older than me. His name's Greg Lindstrom, and he's come back to school to kind of fulfill, some lessons and things. And he's a computer guy by day. So I decided I was going to write a piece for him called The Code Cracker, because cracking codes. He really does writes these big programs. So when I was on the Brass Band About a Creek trip, I was trying to come up with my code of notes. And I it's funny, on my phone, I was like texting myself, like the number, like some numbers or whatever it is. I'll have to show you. It's like, I'm such a goofball. I'll think of something and I'm like, oh, I got to send that to me. I'm probably going to forget it. So like, here's like some sequences of notes.
Oh, I totally do that.
And, but the question is, have you ever done this? So I was doing that. And then, I don't know, I finally came up with this code I wanted to use. But and I wrote it out, and then I'm going, oh my gosh, it's only 2 notes away from being a 12-tone row, which would be super scholarly for me, the theme park musician. But yeah, I came up with this. It's like the coolest 12-tone row ever, and he has no idea. Have you ever done this? It was nighttime, and I had some lick in my head, and I didn't want to get up, so I took a picture of like the dark room, and then took my finger and was writing on.
Oh my gosh, this is like genius. I'm totally stealing that idea. So people who are listening, she has a black screen that she's gone in with like the drawing part of the photo app, and she's drawn in her ideas and saved it as a photo. This is an amazing idea.
But the weird thing is I do that, I have an idea, and there's probably a bunch of them on there that's like me going da 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 da, whatever, singing something in the thing. I never use them. I really don't. And I'm like, and I've learned over, like, I would say in the past 6 months, I'm like, just let it go. There'll be another idea. But with this code thing, I was like, oh, it was kind of neat. And so I ended up finish it. Well, I was just sitting at the music stand actually with Demonterizer, and I was like thinking around that. And so I wrote, it's on the bottom of the music, like the set order, whatever it was. And it's really neat. I should play it for you. Want to hear it? Here's how it goes. Hang on.
Anybody got any jokes?
Greg doesn't know I'm going to do all this to it, but. That's it. I'm going to swing it or something. It was wrong. And it's going to be like all kinds of things. I won't go super crazy and weird on it. Starts out fragmented, but 12-tone row, what the heck?
That's so cool.
That's like the furthest thing from me.
It's a new first on the show. I don't think anybody's actually grabbed an instrument and played it.
Oh, really?
I don't think anyone.
They're always like hanging out in frame, but they're never being played. No.
Well, I hope it didn't sound really bad because it came too loud.
Really great.
No, yeah, it's great.
But imagine, I remember when I went to do my doctorate at Michigan State, I thought there was like electives you could do. So I did a semester of secondary trombone with Ava Ordman, and I did secondary tuba with Phil Sender, and I did secondary composition, which was my first time ever taking composition lessons. By that point, I had done so many different things in the premieres. I was like probably Ricardo Lorenz's first student ever to come to the lesson, and already had a premiere set for an international conference. It was going to be the Michigan State's Faculty Brass Quintet, and he didn't mess with me a whole lot. It was just trying to make me look a little more scholarly and kind of pull me away from, not that I write theme park music, but I find my stuff always have some sort of a groove or something. It's not super weird, but he made me put boxes over it. So it was more, so like it was more of a fragmented beginning. So it's random. I had heard some piece by someone that was always different every time you did it because it was more written out with instructions. So I like that idea. So I did that. It's this piece for brass quintet. But this 12-tone row thing is a big step for me.
Very cool.
And it was by accident.
So the March that you had premiered at IWBC, I'm remembering this correctly, right? It was a March.
Yep.
Can I buy that thing yet?
Well, stuff takes a while. It's been with,
I'll go and yell at right round.
It's been a year, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't want to say anything bad on here, but I'm a finale person and there's Sibelius. And so I was doing converting the XML. He couldn't open it back and forth, and it's daytime there. So it'd be, it was always a day or two between each email, it seemed. And so finally I got one of Stacy Baker's former students who always bails me out when people have Sibelius to convert it. And then he sent it to him. And then apparently Writing Around Music didn't have the most recent version of Sibelius or something. So we had to do something else. I don't know. So it took a while to get that. And then they've taken it and put it and re-engraved it or whatever it is. And again, I don't want to get in trouble, but they changed some of my stuff because I wrote, like, I'm a believer of giving everybody, share the love, right? I think that, and now most brass bands, the first trombone plays a lot, second is hiding out, first baritone plays a lot, second's hiding. I mean, it's like they never get anything. Same thing happens with that tenor horn section, front row cornets, and then the back rows just sit back there. So I actually have places, if you remember, in there where the front row cornets doesn't play and the back row has the melodic line. And I made the first solo horn play while the solo horn wasn't playing to give them a break. But also, it's like there's great players in more than just one seat in the band. Mm-hmm. But he changed that. He told me they were going to change that because it wasn't standard to have the solo horn player not playing that. And they mess with my tuba parts a lot too, move things around and change the octaves. And I don't want to get in trouble on the podcast if they Waiting Around hears it, but don't be messing with my dang tuba parts. So I had to write back and circle and say, please put these back, and I don't know. I don't want to be a jerk because I'm excited they want to publish it, but I don't know. It's not exactly the Athena brass band version is a little different than what's going to be published because they've changed things around a little bit. I think flugelhorn part got cut down, or so, I don't know. And they added some things in the soprano that I said, please take that out. It's not till the second time, but so it's different when you have that. I've never had anyone take something of mine and change it, where I sent it to Brian Doherty and he's just like, bling, and it just shows up. So it's a process. When he did send it to me for the proof over it, it was like the worst time for me. So it was probably a week or so before I could get to it. And he said we missed the October deadline. So now it's January, a year later. And I could have sold probably a dozen copies of it at least. And, it's just from word of mouth with people. So hopefully it'll be soon.
Oh yeah. The band cut off and I looked over at my friend who was there and I was like, we're buying it. we're buying it. Well, also,
how that waiting for it. Yeah.
Well, how that piece started was when COVID hit, there was, we did that regional, we did the virtual Euphonium ensemble, whatever it was, that you had to send parts in, and we had Scott Sutherland put together. And I said, well, I'll write something for it. So that's where that fanfare and fanfare and Persistence March came from. And then whenever Brass Band About a Creek, I wrote it, and I was telling them the Gray brothers, I wrote it for their uncle who was a big inspiration for me. And I felt like the Persistence was coming back from COVID and coming back together. And they said, well, you should score that for brass band. And which I'm like, okay, all right. So I added a bunch of stuff. I added way more colors that you could do with just tubas and euphoniums. And I had written the percussion parts in the beginning just to be a play along track. So it'd be easy for people to sync up. And then Danielle Moreau, I believe, was the one that said she would record all those individual parts. And so she did that for that virtual line thing. And so then the next thing it was like, crap, I had to go back and figure, because I created them based by sounds. So just be a play along. I had to go back now and go, no, what was this? This was the triangle, and this was and it's tricky. And then I didn't write it necessarily for the brass band instrumentation, which sometimes might be 3 players. So we've had to consolidate some things. So I think that's taken a little time too with Writing Around.
Well, we just get excited. it's the mission of the Tampa Brass Band in a lot of ways. Like we have a composer in residence now, and like one of the rules of that is that it has to be a Floridian in some way, shape, or form. And when I heard that, it's like, well, one, it's not very often that you get a really good march that's not like a standard Whit Friday or something like that that's gonna like beat everybody down. I like that it traded, like not everybody, it wasn't like the first cornets were just getting punched the entire time and then, third was just hanging out, but also like it's rare that that happens. It's rare that we get a new good march like that. And then for us, it's very rare that we get a Floridian writing this, or somebody who has Florida ties and something like that. So that instantly was like, oh, it's good. Okay, done. We're buying it.
Oh, well, thank you for your compliments. It is tricky to find women composed pieces for brass band. And especially, like you said, if you're looking for someone who's Floridian. But so, yeah, I think that there's definitely more room for that. I've written a lot of brass band pieces through the years, but they just kind of live on my laptop. So I guess I should get those out and send them off. So we'll see. Mostly arrangements and stuff like that. I think what I've done has been arrangements. I think that was my first brass band composition. So
I wonder how many brass band pieces have just died on laptops.
Well, I mean, like I have that whole entire book of the Tuba 4 stuff from Disney that I've kind of kept hostage all those years because I just felt like it kind of kept those kept us more special because everybody wasn't still playing it. I think back in the day that in Canadian brass, like a lot of their music wasn't available until after they had toured with it, and then it was available. So I don't know. It needs to be out of hostage, but a lot of it is not public domain. I think I need to really become good friends with someone, Hal Leonard, to see if they could have, backdoor pass for that because, I mean, there's a lot of great charts that were done. There was hopes of doing The Colors of the Wind from what is that, Pocahontas back in the day. David Miles was with Euphonium Press and he got real close. Remember getting back and forth. I had to put my name smaller and Alan Menken's name had to be bigger and just a few things. And then boom, it just kind of dried up. So I don't know. I've never written for the money, I guess you could say. It's always just been writing for my friends and people I enjoy writing for.
Do you have anything else in the pipeline? Like anything you're working on brass band oriented?
No, I'm gonna probably do some stuff for the holiday brass. I noticed that some of their charts there could have a little love, and I offered to do some stuff. And a lot of times when people have been running something, they kind of get into a routine and a groove in their trust. So it's hard to get people to let somebody on the outside in. So I think I persuaded Ginger Turner to let me do the Bugler's Holiday for her concert there, and something else I wanted to do. I told her, let me do those two pieces. I mean, I have a Tuba Euphonium quartet version of Bugler's Holiday where we played all the cornet parts and the accompaniment. So I think that would be super easy to do for brass band if I was able to. I covered the whole thing, but that's not published either, so I need to pull those things out.
That would be super fun to play.
It is a really fun chart. And I don't even know if that's on Finale. That's been such a long time ago. That might be manuscript. I have to do the Finale drinking game with Willie Clark. We took because a lot of it was done on staff paper. I mean, I had some marching band paper that was, I like the march style or landscape style because it could go in the flip books. Mm-hmm. This has got to be too small. So yeah, because when we had subs, you had to have that. But yeah, I remember doing all that stuff by hand. And then I had a lot of things I wanted to put on the computer. So Willie Clark came over, who played with me out at Disney. He's in the Air Force ceremonial band. He came over and before I was allergic to drinking. I can't even drink alcohol now. And one of us had the keyboard and one of us was pressing the number on the laptop. So like the 5 for the quarter note. So I think he was doing the letter F and I do 5. It was click, 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 click. And it's so messed up, I had to drink. No kidding. We put a lot of music in Finale that way because the two people doing that.
That's how a lot of work in the brass world, especially in the bass clef brass world, that's how a lot of work gets done. If you turn into a break game, we could probably cure cancer.
Whoever messed up, yeah. True, yeah. Now I can't drink anymore.
When you were with BBCF, did you arrange anything for them at that time?
Yeah. Yeah. And there, I've done Bennett's Triumphal, which lives in my laptop. I scored that march for the brass band. I did the Enduring Charms. That was, I think I've featured on that kind of takes some of the beauty from the Hunsberger one towards the beginning. It's a great, I fixed it. I fixed that up. I don't know, some trios I did. I don't know, it's a lot. Demelza, I think I did a Demelza version. It was for a little smaller version, which is that tenor horn feature. I don't know. I'd have to look.
Wait,
It's
so
been a while.
was it confusing? Genuinely, was it confusing being in BBBC and BBCF at the same time?
Yes, and I teach now at UCA and not UCF.
Oh
When
yeah, I
my
didn't even think
when
about that.
when
You
my
just moved a
boss
letter.
well, when my boss called me to tell me that they had that I had won the job, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to work full time." I said, "Central Florida." I said, "Oh my God, don't forgive me for that." You know, I said that on accident instead of Central Arkansas. Yeah, I don't think I've said that wrong in a while, but I have to catch myself because UCF was my undergraduate and I taught there for, about 10 years as an adjunct. So yeah, brass band at Battle Creek and brass band at Central Florida. That is a hot mess too.
And you're about to found the brass band of Central Arkansas as well, right?
They've got the Natural State Band here, and then there's one I think is called Music Works.
Yeah, they were at NABA this year.
Yeah, our university could have a brass band if we had more trumpet and horn people. Right now, there's plenty. I need it for my studio. I mean, I've got 25, 26 people in my Tuba Euphonium studio here, and you could use it as an ensemble. But I don't know. There's not enough of not all the trumpets and horns are represented here yet. We need more of that. I could totally do all the tubas and euphoniums. Probably can cover the tenor horn players too, because I subbed one time in the what band was that? It was that band out of Michigan. It's oh crap, I can't remember where that band is, but I played tenor horn in there. And it was really fun because some people didn't know who I was. I was a doctoral student at Michigan State, and my friends Kay and Tom asked me if I would sub on that second tenor horn part, which is always the scrub, right? And so I remember going in there and they had us introduce ourselves, and I just really basic just said that I was Gail Robertson. I was a DMA student at Michigan State, and I didn't say anything about brass band of Battle Creek or any things I'd done. My friends are like, "You idiot! Why didn't you tell them?" And I'm like, "No." So it was interesting. I'm not saying anything about people in that band. I haven't said what the name of the band is, but they didn't treat me that I felt like I was treated a lot less because I was just the second tenor horn lady. And then we started playing. It was all my favorite music. It was like da 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 da. John Williams music. There was James Bond. Which I'm a James Bond nutball. All that stuff was in there, and it had really good tenor horns. And I'm wailing on that second tenor horn part, and people started kind of looking over. And it was like a couple rehearsals later when people started schmoozing. I ain't buying that. It was like they didn't have any interest in me when I was the second tenor horn player. So I feel for those people. And that's why I write something good for the second tenor horn player and down the back rows of cornets, because I was mistreated. It was really interesting to see that, because really when they did figure it out, the schmoozing that happened was kind of funny. And I just thought, no, you didn't care when I was just a tenor horn lady. Forget you.
I had an experience with a brass band that I subbed with, and as we were going, up the staircase to the backstage area, I was going to be the only woman on stage that day, and somebody in front of me said to the other guy who was in front of me, he just invited her to so that there would be a woman on stage, influence the gender ratio. And the person who was directly in front of me knows me. And he was like, no, she was invited because she can do the job. Because it was sight reading a show on stage. So, I was like already nervous. I was like, oh man, this is going to be great. But then I went out there and sight read the show. And then somebody was like, oh, you're a great sight reader. And I was like, thanks. And I just thought, I don't like what did you anyway, but that was an experience.
Well, there's
the band name.
There's always that minority kind of a thing that happens with us often. I mean, I was one of the only women in the break room for a long time at Disney, and then for a while there was a saxophone group that shared with us that had a woman in it. And there was, but it's often that, people ask me, what's it like being a minority? And I've been a minority in a few ways. When I taught at Bethune-Cookman University, I was one of the only Caucasian people you would see all day at that school. And I loved it. my students, when you went to Bethune-Cookman, you didn't know who the teacher was. You just were going to be a wildcat, So they didn't know who I was. They'd walk in there, and some of the students, I mean, if I were to blindfold myself and you were to have students from the different places I've been, it'd be hard now because so many people do like me, but for a long time, those kids from Bethune-Cookman would have given the warmest embrace hug because they learned from me, and I was a role model in a different way for them. And but being a minority is sometimes an advantage, sometimes it bites.
Right. It was I'm glad that I had the self-esteem that I have to be able to think to myself, well, that guy's an idiot. I can totally do this,
Yeah.
But I think sometimes about if I didn't have that internalized self-esteem and confidence that I could read that show, it would have been even worse because it was still kind of like a pit in my stomach moment, know?
Yeah, it's like, why would you have to say that? Did they mark up the euphonium part that you were subbing on really well with cuts?
It was honestly, it was a straight down show. There wasn't much that was all that complicated, very poppy type show. And it was very straightforward. It was also Christmas music, so a lot of it was I had already played before.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, after the show, of course, everyone was nice to me, but I was like, hey, I remember who said those things. I remember. Exactly.
I remember when I was just the scrub second tenor horn. I subbed when the brass band, River City Brass Band would come through Florida. It seemed like there always were needing someone on baritone book or something, and I subbed with them a few times. And whoever was in that position, which I don't know who it was, never wrote in the music very clearly what was going on. And I thought, like, well, if there's one way to make sure for job security, make sure you don't mark in your book so the next person just folds. But me, I'm super savvy. I adapted to it. I had to memorize that dang thing and go up to the microphone, pick a little, talk a little, pick a little, cheep, 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 pick a little, pick a little, talk a little mess. I hate singing. Pick a little, talk a little, something really high, but it was a different band. I think James Gurley running that band probably in a different way, but yeah, man, they didn't write anything in that dang book, cuts and whatever it was. And so you're like kind of looking at the other person's part to see the cuts because it wasn't in yours.
Mm-hmm. Oh, man, that's right.
And that's a sight reading too, because there was not a rehearsal specifically because of you.
Right, exactly.
So.
Well, Gail, we have enough that we can give you your time back now.
Well, I'm in no hurry, y'all. Stay as long as y'all want.
Do you want to? Amy actually is in a hurry.
I have a few more minutes. Do you want to do a question? I have a theory student, but I don't need 15 minutes to prep for that. So
what are you teaching in theory?
What am I teaching in theory?
Yeah, some Schenkerian analysis.
We're not really that far.
We got a great example of a 12-tone row on the show if you want me to send it your way.
For this lesson, we're just we're working on identifying inversions on seventh chords, so I don't need 15 minutes to prep for that.
Well, here's the thing, y'all, everybody. And this is the audience I'm speaking to.
Oh, I was
Please submit questions because I can only come up with so many, and I've been listening to juries today since like 8:30 in the morning, so I am so fried that those aren't going to come out of my brain. Not much does anyway, so we're fine. But I do want to compliment Gail. She probably doesn't know this, and I just want to put this out there publicly. So when I came back to Florida after James Madison University, that was shortly after you had left the state. And, about 6 weeks later or so, I'm now sitting principal of the Florida Wind Band and sitting solo with BBCF. And then I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, these are Gail's chairs. Like, I'm here, but these are Gail's chairs. And there's that like saying going, especially like the youths have right now, where they say like, somebody walked so I could run, and that's 100%. Like, I don't think my career would exist if you didn't pave the way for euphonium players in the state of Florida. Genuinely,
that's awesome.
Aww.
And I will say, in terms of like female representation of euphonium players, especially in the state of Florida, I'm the only male in my section in my brass band. And I have one male in my euphonium studio at the University of Tampa. Everybody else is female, and they all look up to you and know who you are and all that sort of thing. So,
Oh wow, that's wild.
Oh, I know what story we can lead out with.
Oh, go for it.
The last time I saw Gail Robertson was at IWBC at the bar after Athena played. And Laura Lineberger said, "Amy, come with me. I want to sit over here." And I was like, "Okay." She grabbed me by the arm, and then she led me to the chair next to you, and she sat down for a second, and she said, "Gail, Amy fangirls you." And then she giggled, and then she ran away.
She did say that and ran away. I remember that.
And then you didn't know what it meant, so you turned to me and you go, "What does fangirl mean?" And I'm like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, we'll have to get Laura Lineberger for that.
We'll have to collaborate to get back at her for that one.
Well, you don't know what you do, but I have to just hope that who was ahead of me didn't do something wrong, because I've seen where like the worst enemy that any of us can be is of each other. Like if someone is in a group and then they're a jerk and they're like, "We're never having a euphonium player again," or whatever. "We'll never have women in the band because all they do is complain." You've got to hope that someone ahead of you did that. But it's nice to see. I didn't realize you played in Florida Wind Band or in the brass band in Central Florida.
Yep, I was in the Florida Wind Band. We had a concert on Saturday. I've been principal of that for the past.
I liked that group. That was a good group. I remember that's the only time I ever got to play When Jesus Wept was with that band. And we did something else that was really cool. One of those, he liked playing I can't think of the pieces. I'm not going to waste your time. But the When Jesus Wept.
And it's a little bit different now that John retired and moved back up with family and all that. But I mean, Matt is doing a phenomenal job. And it's very much in the spirit of what John was doing, just less rehearsals.
No, that was a fun group.
It is. It's a phenomenal group. My wife actually runs like the administrative side of things of it, and it's very close to home. I have a lot of cookies right now in my kitchen from the hang afterwards. Everybody brought cookies for some reason, and we have a bunch. What else do you have? So I know the only thing I'm aware of that you've got coming up. I know you're doing IET in the summer, right? You're an artist on that.
Yeah, I'm going to be at that for a little while. I teach at the American Band College. It's a rotation, I believe, like a 3-year rotation, because that online masters that they do. So this summer is my summer there up in Ashland, Oregon. Amy and I both teach at the Brass Chamber Workshop, which is cool, but we never see each other.
We never see each other. Yeah.
But I'll probably
he does one week and I do the other.
Yeah, I'll probably do that again if it works in the schedule. Of course, I sent my proposal in last night for a couple things. I was hoping to do a reading ensemble that would be of new music in the morning instead of just a reading ensemble, and do a call for scores for composers. So I'm hoping if there's any new pieces that would work for big ensemble, that we could do that. And of course, I like playing on the night jazz jam, so I hope to do that again too. That's fun. So yeah, there's not a whole lot. I think there's it's a busy summer because of this here and this here and this here. And so I don't know, I'm the past 2 years, I've been kind of camping and going out of town. We went up to Montana 2 years ago and we're gone like 8 or 9 weeks. We went all up in Wyoming and all that. Last year we went Upper Peninsula of Michigan and came down. This year I don't know what I'm going to do because Arizona is early, and then I don't know what's going to happen. I may not be going on a long camping trip.
Well, if you want to come down to Hillsborough County, let me know.
I'm going to be down there. I'm going to Florida on Thursday. You got to come over to my Tuba Christmas in Orlando.
Oh yeah, actually, like this Thursday. When's the Tuba?
Saturday.
I can make that work.
Yeah, come to that. Yeah, we have I hire a drummer, and we have the regular green book with all the breaking of the rules of music theory, and then we have another book that's got a bunch of charts I've done with Chris Sharp through the years, and you sign that book out, and then we collect it. We don't, it's not for sale or anything, but we do that. And Mike Rossi sometimes is a conductor. I'm not sure if he's going to be there this year or not because his football team kept winning. So, but I have that, and I'm always down in Florida at least once for that, and then another part of the year for the state solo ensemble judging.
Yeah, what county do you normally judge? Do you know?
I do state, so it's from all the.
Yeah, well, they district it out now, so it's like Orange County is like the middle of Florida, I think.
Yeah, this last time I think I was in I was over in Cocoa Beach area or something, which is Central Park, but. So
well,
yeah, I'll
obviously
be there.
You've got a lot going on and you're super busy. thank you so much for coming and hanging out with us and chatting.
Busy is good. That's what I have to say. Busy is
Busy
good.
is good.
If you're not busy, and if I'm not busy, I am not happy. So
thank you again.
Thank you for having me here. It's great to be with Amy, and my fangirl here, and be with Aaron, my fanboy. Now y'all are making me feel old.